Well, how about that for Cinderella? We have TCU facing the defending champion, Georgia Bulldogs, 12.5 point underdogs as we record here today. Kyle, shocked? Are you shocked? How are you feeling about this?
I would just like to acknowledge the fact that I said going into that game that what is the great equalizer for TCU? Turnovers. What did TCU do? Get not one, but two pick sixes on JJ McCarthy. We can insert that clip here if you want, or you can just edit this out. But I
And,
have to say,
insert too that JJ was the only quarterback out of the CFP that was not on the Heisman stage. That kind of was another thing that kind of came up big in that matchup.
let me also say, not the second one, great job by D Winters, the linebacker for TCU. He's going to get drafted pretty soon. 3-year starter. Great story. The first one, I don't fancy myself much of a quarterback per se, but in flag football games, I'm starting at quarterback against pretty much anyone. And I have to say, that was an atrocious pick six. Like, that was just a basic out route. McCarthy waited a second too long to throw it, threw it behind his receiver, and he kind of deserved to have it go back for a pick six. Like, that was just an atrocious play. But to answer your question, I am a little bit surprised that TCU is here, although after watching the 7 touchdowns in 6 minutes and 20 seconds that ensued in TCU Michigan, I think at the end of that game, it was kind of like both teams aren't really playing defense at this point, so someone's going to win. And for TCU, it happened to be because of those 2 pick sixes. That was the 14-point swing that ended up winning them the game.
And how about Georgia having to bite, scratch, and claw to get themselves back into the championship game? Ohio State gave them everything they could handle. Credit to you because you said CJ Stroud was going to put on performance, and he sure did. This Georgia Bulldogs defense, we learn, they're not as good as the Georgia Bulldogs defense from last year. They're still good, but they're not as good. So you look at TCU and you look at some of the explosive things they were able to do offensively, and it makes this game a lot more interesting than I think the 12.5 point line suggests.
Yeah, to the point about Georgia, Vegas was kind of projecting that this was how the game would play out. I think 80% of the bets were on Georgia. So Vegas was betting on Ohio State covering the spread, and they were kind of like divided on who would win the game outright. And lo and behold, it came down to the last play of the entire game. So that one wasn't necessarily as surprising an outcome as TCU beating Michigan and beating them pretty handily. I think even Vegas was surprised by that result. But Georgia, like you said, they had all they could handle. It took a shootout against Ohio State, which is never a situation that any team wants to be in. And yet our boy Jetson Bennett ended up carrying the Georgia Bulldogs just far enough to beat Ohio State, which even if Michigan had advanced to the championship instead of TCU, I felt like most of the season, Ohio State was going to be the best chance to beat Georgia because of what we were talking about with all those 5 stars and the reason that I thought they were going to beat Michigan going back a few weeks ago. I felt like Ohio State was going to be the best punch no matter what at Georgia. Now that TCU's here, it would be even more shocking if Georgia had a letdown game in this one because, like you said, it's a 12.5 point spread, which last year for Alabama and Cincinnati, the point spread was 14. So Vegas is basically saying that this is a semifinal matchup that happens to be in the championship.
I guess the difference for Ohio State is you would have preferred to have a 5-star kick holder, as that may have been the difference in the game. Obviously, wide left by a wide margin was the difference in that game. Credit to Georgia and their ability to battle back. I think I've underrated that in a couple matchups we've predicted this year as far as if they get into these shootouts, can they fight back? And you go into this matchup against TCU. Now, we said during the Michigan preview that TCU's defense is not good. And that's still held true in that semifinal game. TCU still looked like a 50 to 60th ranked defense. But as you mentioned, JJ McCarthy, 2 pick sixes. That touchdown that should have been, that was, but those were the differences in that game. Is Georgia going to have those same level of mistakes? I know Stetson threw a pick in the last game, but will he have another bad one in this one? If he does, can TCU's defense be opportunistic enough to take advantage of that? And when they have the ball, will Max Duggan, will that offense that Sonny Dykes has engineered be able to hit their playmakers, hit Quentin Johnson. I mean, hell, you talk about Quentin Johnson. This guy's looking like he may shoot to the top of the wide receiver boards. So you look at players who will be difference makers in this matchup. Their running back, forgive me, I'm missing on names. Not a huge college expert, more of a pro guy myself, but their running back out of TCU, he's a badass, but got hobbled in that game against Michigan. So if he's not 100%, will they still be able to engineer a running game against this Georgia front seven? That's going to be one of the things to monitor as far as, can this TCU offense come with that same level of consistency that they've had throughout the year? I think that they'll still be able to score points. The Ohio State matchup gave me a lot of hope for their ability to still be able to put up points. The question is, can they slow down Georgia even a little bit? Just enough resistance, if they could just have an ounce of bend but don't break, don't allow a field goal instead of a touchdown. That may be the margin. That may be their opportunity to actually get an upset in this game. They have a little bit of team of destiny, Phil, in them. I got to say, like you think about like where they started the year, only the second unranked team to even make the CFP, preseason unranked team to make the CFP. And they're here and they're making noise. And, you know, as someone who grew up watching the Mountain West, seeing TCU in the spot is very exciting to me.
Yeah, and there's a couple points I want to go to here. The TCU this year, to the point you just said, this is already one of the greatest stories in the history of college football. Like, most people point to 2013 Auburn as like the most chaotic winner ever, because like they had the pass against Georgia that hit a guy in the helmet and deflected into a guy's arm, and then they had the kick six, and then they made it to the championship game and lost to Jameis Winston's Florida State. But like, TCU has done all of that. TCU, going from a team that was 5-7 last year, didn't really overhaul the roster a whole lot. They were kind of in the teens in terms of transfer portal entries, and the best players on this team, like the running back, I think I'm trying to remember how to pronounce his name. It's like DiMercado, I think his name is, but him, Duggan, Quentin Johnson. We mentioned Winters on defense, who led the team in tackles and had the second pick six. These are all guys who were on the team last year. So like a 5-7 team last year just ran it back, and all of a sudden they're in the national championship. That's one of the craziest stories ever in college football. And to your point about their defense going up against Georgia's prolific scoring offense led by the mailman Stetson Bennett, which is still really stupid to say.
Robbed of a Heisman. Robbed. I watched Caleb Williams against Tulane. Absolutely robbed Stetson Bennett.
It's almost more stupid than saying two-time national champion quarterback Stetson Bennett. It's almost as stupid as that. But I will say, like, watching the TCU Michigan game, there were two times where I was just like, oh, this is why people don't believe in TCU, was when the game hadn't gotten stupid, and it was still like 21-10 at that point. I was like, okay, TCU, you're +2 in the turnover margin. Just don't turn the ball over. I said that on the kickoff, and then the very next play was the Max Duggan interception. I was like, God damn it. What? First play after I said, don't turn it over. And then the next one was they started playing off coverage on wide receivers and dropping back. And I'm not like a college football expert at all, but I'm like, why are you dropping back in coverage so much? And then the play gets snapped, and then it turns into a 45-yard completion for Michigan. And I'm just like, why are you doing that? Clearly you should play press coverage. Clearly you should have safeties drop down. Clearly you should dare them to throw the ball over the top instead of just opening up all this space in the field. But TCU, I guess, was just betting on getting pressure. Basically, I understand why TCU is a 12-point underdog against Georgia, who, again, lost 5 first-round picks to the draft last year on defense and will have 3 to 4 first-round picks on defense this year. Like, Georgia at this point, like you said, they're not as good of a defense this year as last year, but Georgia is basically like 2012 Alabama, except with an offense that can score 40 points a game. So like kind of 2016 Alabama. That's kind of the space that Georgia's occupying right now, and they're probably going to win this game.
Probably going to win this game. Final verdict, stamping it, putting the rubber stamp, Kyle Ledbetter approved, Georgia winning this game.
Georgia winning this game, but God, I love the I'm going to be rooting for the psychedelic frog. I'm going to be rooting for the psychedelic frog and TCU, who, you know, all of their star quarterbacks are redheads. So TCU, I'm rooting for TCU so hard. I just know that the odds are stacked against them.
You imagine the heart of a champion type things we're going to hear from Max Duggan all week in the lead up to this game. Obviously, you think about the believe he had heart surgery just this offseason, if I'm not mistaken, was the story
Mm-hmm.
there. So that's going to be a part of the buildup here. And, happy for the kid. I think where TCU's chance, specifically Duggan's opportunity, is to shine in this game is his ability to obviously extend plays with his leg. If he could get outside the pocket and, give Quentin Johnston some time to get open, I think he's going to have those opportunities there. He just has to hit them enough and hit them more than Bennett can hit them. Still, I think, you got to go chalk when you're talking about the defending champion. You're talking about a Cinderella story like TCU. But I got to say, this, for anyone that said, hey, expanding the college football playoff is stupid. This is the type of stuff I was looking forward to. This is the type of stuff I wanted. I want some unusual dance partners. I want some people that don't get invited to the party half the time. TCU's at the party, and guess what? They are raging. I don't want to see the party carry on. Anyway, guys, we're both going Georgia, but TCU, fun story nonetheless. What do you think? Drop below in the comment section. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel. Follow us on social media. You can see our new background here. Got our handle there. Go ahead and check that out at Slumpbuster Pod, at Slumpbuster Podcast. From Juju and Kyle, stay safe, happy, and healthy, and we will see you next time.